May the 26th, and this is the Community Redevelopment Agency meeting. Let's go through and call the roll, please.
Gary Paytow. Sorry. Gary Paytow.
Here.
Jeffrey Jones.
Here.
Samuel Hall.
Here.
Francis Pawlowski.
Here.
And Chairman Art Graham.
I'm here. Okay, we're going to start off this meeting. We got a couple items under discussion. I know Francis says she's got some things to bring up under other. Francis, if it fits in some of the things that we're going along, let's do it then. If not, we can do it towards the end. I assume we're going to go on here for about no more than 90 minutes, but let's get started. Mr. Mann, the first one is downtown CRA projects and update. If you can, number one, go through the list of things that we have that needs to be updated, and number two, tell us what the role the CRA took in those projects.
Okay. Start out with the construction projects. The first one being Margaritaville. The CRA was the recommender of approval by the city council, finding that the Margaritaville plan was consistent with the downtown redevelopment plan. That project is fully topped out. Their exterior building skin is being put on at this point, and since they are also enclosing the exterior, they're now doing their interior build out. They still have a projected contract completion date of 12/9/20, so it should be finished before the end of the calendar year. That's Margaritaville project. The next one, the Spring Hill Suites project, they successfully got a test on their test pile for the foundation, and they're currently in foundation design. I just had a call from Alex Grace of the Grace Construction Company, who's managing and building that project. Their lenders just put a 60-day freeze on any financial lending. So that's going to put their start out at least 2 months. The applicant has already paid for the building permit, paid a significant amount of money for their payment in lieu of parking fund. So they're ready to go, but for the lender. So he's fairly positive that it's going to get worked out. 60 days was an estimate for their lender. We'll just have to wait the 60 days and see what happens with that. But that project's still on go. The next project, 221 North First Street. Yes, sir.
Bill, hold on a second. Spring Hill, what did the CRA have to do with that project?
I'm sorry. The CRA was the same capacity as Margaritaville. The project exceeded 50,000 square feet, so it had to go through RD rezoning. The CRA was an approver of that project, finding it consistent with the downtown redevelopment plan.
But if there was no CRA district, would that project still would have gone through just with city council?
It would have, if there was no CRA district, because it exceeded 50,000 square feet, it would have been steered to be a PUD project. So the planning commission and the city council would have considered it instead of CRA, planning commission, and city council. It would have been a planned unit development versus a redevelopment district.
Okay, continue.
The next one is 221 North First Street. That's what everybody around here colloquially calls the Baja Buckets building. Most recently, it was Sydney's on First Street, and it contained the small Jack's Beach board shop, building with the courtyard parking. They recently, if you've gone by, they had demolished the existing building. When they were going through discovery, they found out it was infeasible for them to construct that project based on the existing building shell. So now they have leveled it. They're in discussions and design with their architects to essentially build the same massing that was there before. 2-story building, a micro hotel bringing probably 13, 15 hotel rooms on that second floor, and restaurant uses on the first floor, or restaurant use, excuse me, on the first floor. The same retail cube that the the little surf shop had right now. It may not be a surf shop, but that'll be a retail component. There will be some level of parking within the courtyard for the hotel guests, and the company is contemplating also moving their corporate offices to this location. Currently, they're on 3rd Street in Neptune Beach. And they're probably, their estimate was that they were at least 6 months out for building permit application. The next project is Element Hotel. That's the hotel that's going in on the southeast corner of Beach Boulevard and A1A. And they're on schedule, and they're looking at mid-November, early December for a CO for that project as well. The last major private project downtown right now is the Dolphin Depot project. And they got to the level, they do have an issued building permit. Once they got to the final level of design where they could go out for construction costing, they immediately hit the brakes because current construction pricing is prohibitive for them to go forward with the project right now. So the project is on hold. How we were aware of that project fixing to come up on deck was they tried to they begun negotiations with us to use the CRA lot that's just north of the Ritz. They have said right now they don't have the interest in that because of the project being on hold right now. And they didn't want to tie up that lot in case their project does not go forward at this point. So that's the status of the Dolphin Depot project. Same thing with the other two hotel projects. This project was a CRA, came before the CRA for determination of consistency with the downtown redevelopment plan. And if you remember that one, that's the mixed, some commercial on the first floor, 50-something apartment units and 50-something hotel units. So it was a mixed use project. So that's it for
Hold
the
on a sec.
major, oh, sure.
Hold on a second, Bill. Francis had a question.
So one of my questions later, and we can get into more depth about it, has to do with the attorney that we hired and what we can and can't do without, permission for the council. Are we going to address that when it comes to these properties later? Like why we went through certain elements with them? I mean, I'm just curious. Are we going to have a discussion about that attorney and what we can do and can't do? Because if you're asking, what did the CRA do with these, and what are we going to address what we could have done or what we should be doing with these going forward?
Well, my question is, or I guess my concern is does the CRA have any money into these things? If there's something, but for the CRA, would these projects even be there moving forward? I guess the question I'm kind of trying to find out.
Right. Okay. I'm just trying to gauge where we're going with it. That's all.
Okay, in answer to your question, Art, no, the CRA does not have any monetary incentive or financial involvement in any of the projects.
Because they're all
Okay.
private.
If the CRA were not in existence, these properties we're dealing with each had vested building height after the 2004 height cap. So in my mind, absent the CRA, these projects would still be in our current our arena. They would just be private construction projects going under the PUD because all of them exceed that 50,000 square feet threshold that we've established in our zoning code for requiring PUD or RD zoning.
All right, hold on a second, Bill. Gary?
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that I think we should think about a little bit is that all of these projects ongoing right now are doing having a significant impact on the downtown area in the way of impacting the existing infrastructure and so forth. We ought to put together a plan as a CRA on how we can improve the downtown area that corresponds with the construction of all of these projects. There's so much that is damaged and needs some rework down there. It would be good for us as the CRA to put a plan together that finishes all of it, the downtown area as well as all of these projects concurrently.
I agree with you. If I can get everybody that's not currently talking to mute your mic, I'm getting a lot of feedback. If everybody can just mute your mic. And then when I recognize you to speak, you can just unmute your mic and speak. Gary, I agree with you. I think we can do that. I think a lot of that goes back to, we were talking about hiring somebody to work with us with the CRA. And I guess that goes right into my next question to Bill Mann is, Bill, where do we stand now with us hiring somebody and moving forward with the CRA employee?
Okay, we're in preliminary budget discussions with City Council right now, both for my department and for the CRA on the administrative side. I will tell you, we have identified a salary level. I can't remember what the exact number is. So that position is funded in the budget. So now it's just a spatial concern on my part. Effective October 1, we would have the money in the CRA budget to hire this person. So I need to make sure it coincides, in this fall of this year that I've got the physical space to put them. And we're working on that right now.
Do we even have a job description written yet?
Sir, we have what you and I have discussed, and I've also discussed with the city manager. It's going to be a project manager program coordinator position. So some of it will be bird dogging existing projects like the South End project, coordinate with Public Works. and the contractor, and also doing some of this ombudsman type work in the downtown area. So that's the program administrative function of it. So yes, sir, I do feel that would, and we're getting that as we find what the budgetary needs are, what we've got available, we're honing down what that job position is. So I feel comfortable once we get into this fiscal year, we'll start moving fairly rapidly towards securing that position. So what I'm saying is it's funded right now, and I think I have a place to put him. We've got to build a cube and whatnot. So we are moving forward.
May I, Chairman? May. Can you hear me? So I did look at all the places in downtown area for us because that was one of the tasks you guys had before this COVID. Two of the places I had found and was going to present to you guys have already been filled up with other renters now. And I still am a big believer that if we need to have the space, we should use some kind of portable office space on one of our properties. And I think that we do need to have that kind of push through so we can kind of get our old items always on the old items list for these agendas. So they're constantly being touched on. And just to kind of ask a different question, I kind of heard through the grapevine, and I didn't hear it on the council meeting, so I'm just calling to confirm. Did we lose our code enforcer, the person who was doing that before?
No, ma'am, we did not. Nikki
Okay.
Beavers is still our active code enforcement officer.
All right, so right now we have that person and some of the officers doing it, and that's what we're going to try to also incorporate in this position as well.
Well, they have the ability, if nothing else, they will have the immediate ability to reach out to the code enforcement officer. There are certain violations, if they're not remedied just by proactive interface with them, if we don't get them to comply, if it has to go through the magistrate path, at that point, this CRA person would not be able to take it to the magistrate, but she would have the information for our code enforcement officer to do it. So she would be an additional set of eyes on the street without having that without having code enforcement citation. Unless as they get on board, if we find out that's a path we want them to take, then we may do that.
And then you said you were doing your budget talks and what have you. Have you guys also budgeted in part of our CRA budget to include us covering that rent, not just salary? Because we've already all pretty much agreed, if I remember right, that we'd all be willing to make sure part of our budget went to cover said space for the people who are going to help us.
Well, things have changed. The last time I think we discussed this position in detail, when I said I don't have any room for them, that has somewhat changed because number one, we're not in the point now where we are looking for an assistant fire marshal. So even if the fire marshal stays in this department, I think I have room for one employee space position. If we only need that one employee, then I think we can accommodate it within our building. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Thank you.
Which would make things go a lot quicker. Yes, ma'am.
Jeff, question?
Yes, just backing up to Francis's report. Did you look at the Pier Point first floor offices? Francis?
I sent a message out and never got a response back to Pier Point.
Because I think we talked a little bit about it. They have a difficult time renting out those spaces because of the condo restrictions for a retail or regular business.
I reached out to a commercial real estate person and asked them for just basically in the downtown area what places were available for rent. And they gave me a number to call, and I called and I never heard back for that specific location. But if you have contacts, definitely go for it if you can. But it sounds like Bill doesn't want us to do that now because he's got room.
I have no contacts there.
Yeah. Okay.
And it could, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt, but it could be an interim solution that we hire this position. It does initially get housed in our office, but if some point in the future, the administration of the CRA goes back to a separate full-time director, at that point, what you're talking about a separate, presence somewhere in the downtown may still be viable. But right now, I don't think we need to do it. I'm fairly sure I can accommodate it here now. But part of that is because of the economic impact and our downsizing and lack of hiring elsewhere, which now is going to potentially make space available in City Hall. So initially, while I'm still the part-time administrator, that position could function under me. And I would feel uncomfortable if I'm still the administrator and this new hire is by themselves in a remote location, at least until I build up a rapport with them. So if I can keep them in here, I'd be fine. But I agree that going forward, if the downtown administration or if the administration of the entire CRA becomes a full-time position, you're right. We may want to look at adding admin budget to fund an off-site fully separate CRA suite.
So you're saying that right now, this guy won't come on before October 1st?
No, sir, it's not budgeted until the next fiscal year, which starts October 1. That's not saying we can't let it out and try to get the applications going. I'm not sure once we fully finally decide it and define it, what kind of, applicants we're going to get, but we won't know till we put it out there.
And so where are we with that? You said fully define what the applicant's going to look like. Are we going to do that part of one of our meetings? What are we doing moving forward?
I can have a
once
more
again,
defined project or employee description at our next CRA meeting.
my fear is that this thing, and I'm sounding like a broken record now, we got the thumbs up from everybody on the CRA and everybody on the council a year ago, February, and we're
Right.
still don't have somebody there working for us.
Understood.
I mean, because I hear the things that Gary said, the questions he was asking, and legitimate questions and things that we talked about before he got here. But those are all the things that we're going to hand over to that individual. Gary, you have a question?
Yes, sir. Just for my clarification, Bill, you're saying all of this has to be approved through the city council for funding for this position. Does the CRA not have funds available to fund this position immediately?
The CRA budgets have to be approved by the city council. This is also an amendment to our pay plan because this position they do work for the CRA, but they're also an employee of the city, just as the CRA is a subset of the city government. So we have to amend our employee pay plan because this position is not contemplated, and the city council approves the budget for the CRA.
Okay, so the last budget that was approved by the CRA did not include this position.
No, sir, that's correct. That was approved last October, I think it was last October. It's in the fall of each year.
Yeah.
Or maybe
For some
August,
reason-
maybe August. Go ahead, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I'm sorry, I was just under the assumption that the budgeting had been put forth in the CRA budget to allow for
No,
this
sir.
position.
No, sir, but it has now for the upcoming fiscal year.
Okay.
Francis, you had a question?
Gary just basically covered it. My question was more along the lines of, if I remembered right when we were speaking to the attorney, because it does sometimes feel like we're going in circles. When we were talking to the attorney, it was said, or I think I heard him saying that anything over $25,000 had to go to approval, or like Bill said earlier about the size of the, square footage of a place had to go to CRA for approval. But are we sure that it's a monetary amount and not, we just have to follow the same processes as the council? So like if the council were going to do something, couldn't we just do the same process and not be a monetary? I mean, I guess it's really a question for when we talk about the attorney, where you stand on his review and what have you. Is that more accurate time to talk about that?
Bill?
I thought I understood your question at first, but at the end of it, you lost me. Are you talking about the payroll for the employee, or are you still your concept of going off site to rent a building or something?
So the concept of not tying our hands, right? So I vaguely remember a $25,000 a limit. And if it was over that, we had to go to get council approval. You're talking about square footage where we have to get approval. I thought there was anything that fit inside the plan itself, as long as we did the process that matched the same process as council, we would be able to do it without getting their approval, even if it's over that, because we follow their same, you put out bids and you take the lowest amount. So if you follow the same exact process, we wouldn't have to go to council for that because we're following their lead on that. We wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, are we saying we have to get approval for this person and the budget? I mean, I understand the budget part, but for all these other things, are we having to, every project going forward, we have to go to them if it's over 25,000 or?
The 25,000 is where we need to get competitive bids, and that the CRA has to follow the city's purchasing procedure. Any
Right.
resolution we've had for, because we're going to talk about your February meeting when y'all had the $28,000 approval for additional design services on Jack's Drive. We're going to talk about that in a minute. The CRA approved that by resolution. It also still had to go to city council because it's still part of the city's overall budget. Those expenditures for those capital projects still go through city council. So no, ma'am, I do not believe you can do a similar, parallel, but totally separate approval from council. I believe
Well,
it has to
that's
go
in-
through city council.
The way you just said that means that we'll never be able to push anything through underneath the plan itself because it will have to go through budgeting purposes through the council. So in a way, it's, if we have the right, this is where I want to ask the attorney question. Maybe I need to direct an email to him directly. If we have the ability to get things done that's inside this plan and we're able to push it through without involving the council, then we should be able to follow their processes and getting bids and not involve them in the monetary part of it because it follows the process that they follow. Instead, we're sending it, we're saying we recommend it, we would like to do it, they have to approve it in our budget. They can instantly squash anything we put forward. If I'm understanding what you just said.
That is true. That's correct.
Well, then that's not right. That's not what the city attorney said we can do. And I believe that's what this new attorney is going to give us. And that's what I'm frustrated with. Like I don't think that's correct. I would like clarification from our attorney and maybe the one we've hired on that process. Is I don't think that they have to approve anything that's in the, they'll have to approve in a budget for something that fits inside the plan for an area that we have been tasked to run, as long as we follow their processes. I think that's how it's supposed to go, but I don't know. I'm not working it like you
I
are.
understand your position, and I forgot, that was one item I was going to touch on. I just had I've gotten email correspondence with the gentleman with Cliff Shepherd's firm that's working on it. He's done his full initial analysis. I expect him to come reach out to me fairly soon and come before you and tell you where he is with that. That would be the appropriate time to have that discussion. I understand your viewpoint. That's just not that's not my understanding of Chapter 163, Part 3.
I think we need to explore that, because if we're running on that, there's no way the CRA can ever get anything done if we're having to get everything approved when it's already been approved and we've been appointed to do it. That's what I want to find out. So I do want to have an appointment, even if it's earlier than 1 month. I just would like to know the answer to that.
Understood. Understand. And we can reach out individually or separately to our counsel, to Chris Ambrosio, and also to the gentleman at Shepherd's firm. I mean,
Okay.
I can do that we don't have to get together as a group to get that answered.
I'll email. Thank you, Bill.
And some of that information came from our prior city attorney versus our current city attorney. And I don't know if they were on the same page of that. Denise May, remember, I think she's the one that gave us that information. When she came up with the one page, hey, these are the powers of the CRA, what you can and can't do. That was literally regurgitated out of Florida statutes.
Right.
But I understand your question.
Sam? Sam, question?
Yes, I was trying to unmute. Yes. We spoke at length about code enforcement. I'm wondering if this in this new job description, will any of that include those responsibilities?
They can and will, to the extent that it doesn't require the certification. As I said, for voluntary compliance, hey, could you please clean up behind your, the back stoop of your restaurant or your business? If they do it voluntarily, that's the initial impact. If it goes forward for compliance or they go for non-compliance and it has to go to the magistrate, a certified code enforcement officer has to make that case before the magistrate. But it doesn't mean that the information that the code enforcement officer presents can't have come from our downtown program administrator, that's what I said. This project position we envision now is a project manager for active projects we have going, and also a program administrator for any of the other things we've got going on downtown, like the concrete repairs. I was going to touch on that in a minute.
Bill, I got a question for you. If we have to follow the city of Jacksonville Beach procurement plan, if I remember correctly, if the city of Jacksonville has got a contract with somebody, or if there's a state contract, can't we piggyback on one of those contracts and not have to go out to competitive bid?
Yes, sir, we can. And there's also an exclusion in the statutes for legal services. For instance, we didn't have to get competitive bids to reach out to Mr. Shepherd, but that's because that's legal services. But otherwise, you're right. They call it piggybacking onto open contracts. So yes, if we have that availability and we have a vendor that we know that has that, we can go straight to them as sole source.
Well,
But even that purchase then, once we negotiate with them and get a price, that's still ultimately with the CRA resolution approving their us engaging with them, it still goes to city council for final approval.
I was talking to Jim Gilmore, the guy that initially created our CRA.
Right.
And I asked him if he'd be willing to come on board and work for us as a consultant. And he says he would be willing to. He's got a contract with both JAA and JTA, so he's got 2 county contracts already. So would we be able to hire him as a consultant like he is for those guys and not have to go back out to competitive bid?
I'm not the purchasing agent, but I will find out for you. It would seem like we would, because that's consistent with what I've been told and how I understand our purchasing procedure. So I believe that's accurate, but I need to verify that with our purchasing agent.
Because
This
I think
contract-
he'd be a great resource to get us up and running, kind of like we're looking to do, to get somebody that's going to be independent, someone that can help us bring projects forward, because that's kind of like the way the CRA was when it was first developed.
Exactly.
Before they brought it back inside, and Steve Lindorf, it was part of his job.
That's correct. That's correct. Did you say the 2 contracts were with the FAA and JTA? Did I hear you right?
It's JAA and JTA.
Oh, JFA, the Aviation Authority. Okay. No, I'll find that out. And you're right.
I mean,
that could even be in the interim. If we could get him on board for consulting in the interim and still look for this position, he may be able to do some of that same work, in anticipation of getting the permanent employee.
I think that may be a great way of moving forward. And if the rest of the board would allow me to sit down and meet with you and purchasing people, maybe we can get that moving before our next meeting.
And
this-
also come up with a scope for what his actual services to the CRA would be.
I got a question from Gary. Gary?
Well, my question is more back to what Francis was asking about. I guess I'm a little, I'm not sure I understand why at this time we're still trying to figure out how funding happens for CRA projects. The CRA has been in existence for quite a number of years. There must have been some precedent set earlier on as to how other projects, previous projects, have been funded. So that we must know how we can move forward on projects as it relates to the funding source.
I agree. And we do it the way we have been doing it, which is the way I've understood that's how we do capital project programming. Is the CRA approves it for consistency with the plan, city council approves it because it's an amendment to the budget when they're adding those new capital improvement charges. That's just how we've done it, and that's how we do it right now. As I said, point in case is that February 28th, when we approved the additional $28,000 for Hanson, who we're going to hear from in a little bit, to do that additional work. The CRA approved a resolution modifying the contract services, and then it went to city council for approval of the allocation of the money. And that's how we do it going forward, to my mind, unless we find out otherwise.
I'd like to ask, and I don't know who the appropriate person to ask this of, but I would like to ask, since I'm the newest member on the CRA, I don't have an understanding of the financial side of this agency. And I'd like to sit down with somebody at City Hall and help me explain how we receive our funding, how fundings are expended, and what is the responsibility the CRA has as it relates to the funding on each of the projects. Right now, I'm not clear, and we're getting a lot of different opinions on what we think it should be, but there's no consistency.
There's no consistency in your mind in how these projects are going through the CRA and then the city council? I mean, it's fair. Okay, I understand that. That meeting would be with myself and the chief financial officer, Ashley Gossett, and I can set that up for you. I have no problem doing that.
Okay. Yeah, I need it. I don't know if anybody else
No, I
does.
understand. I understand.
Francis, you have a question?
I'm sound like a broken record as well, but Bill, when I read this, I'll send you what I've been reading. But when I read it and from what I understand it to be, and like I said, I am not as tenure as you in this and I don't do the job every day. I really truly think that if it's in the plan and we follow the processes of what the city council has set precedent to, we don't have to bring this stuff to them as long as it fits inside the parameter. So we approve that it fits. We should be able to go out and get the bids and get it done without having to go back to council for it. I believe that's how it's read. I know that that's really why I want to talk to the two attorneys and we see how that goes, because I think that we're going in lots of circles. Things are being delayed because of it. And just like past projects, all of a sudden they disappear because the council doesn't agree with it. If the council isn't going to just take our recommendations, if we're going to do this, then why even go through the whole process? It's they appoint us to follow a plan. We make sure it fits in a plan. We get the recommendations and we take all that work off their plate and we get it done so they don't have to look at it again. That's why they appointed the CRA originally. So when you made that comment about, yes, we can go through all this stuff, but then we could bring it to them to review. I really still think that process, no matter how long it's been going on, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I feel like logically it doesn't make sense. If you're going to appoint someone to do all this work for you and you just really check in on them, why do you have to prove every single thing when the document itself says you can work with in this purview? I really do want to have a meeting with them as well. That's all. He just said it again, and every time you say it, it makes me kind of crawl a little bit. So sorry.
Understand.
All right, Bill, before you continue with downtown projects, Mark, if I can get you to bring us up to date on what's going on with the police officers, and then I'll let you move on if that works for you. Mark, you there? There you go. I think you need to unmute. It looks like you're still muted. You're still muted. There you go.
I'm trying. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Go for it. Tell us what's been going on the last 60 days.
Well, basically, during this whole time with our social distancing and things of that nature, a lot of the businesses we've had, when the governor put the order out as far as with alcohol and things of that nature, sealed or not sealed, we've kind of had a short battle with all of that. We do still have the crowds in the downtown area. We are still working our full downtown Cape officers. We also had a lot that we brought in during the first one in the pandemic, as far as because we didn't know what to expect with our parks and things of that nature there at the Sidewalk Pavilion and the Pier area. So all in all, it's been pretty well. As with everywhere else in our city, our crime is pretty much down, which is a good thing. We don't have all those patrons that are coming out at night. They're starting to come back. This past weekend was very positive with us. I don't want to jinx ourselves, but we didn't have any major incidents. We did have some things that took place, but nothing really newsworthy. So other than that, we're still continuing to increase our officers in that downtown area. One of our corporals, Corporal Randy Blaylock, which most of you guys know, he actually tore his rotator cuff on duty. So he's out. His surgery is actually this Friday, and we hope to have our last vacancy filled in the downtown Cape area June 1st.
Do we have any idea when the bars are going to open up, or are we just waiting to hear from the governor on that one?
We're just waiting to see what the governor puts in his orders. And I'll be very honest with you. In the past couple times, we got it the same time everyone else got it by watching his brief. We didn't really have a big lead, especially when he closed the beach on that Friday. We didn't know it was coming until we heard it on the news with everyone else. So I'm thinking we've been talking around here probably, I'm thinking in a couple of weeks, especially with places like Universal Studios down in Orlando and things like that, they're going to be open in June. So we're starting to think that way, but we won't know until he actually makes a decision.
Does anybody have a question of Mark? We'll start with Francis.
Just on public nuisances, we had talked about them in the past, and I know that the police department handles some of them. Is our noise, what is our noise policy for cars and outside bars?
As far as outdoor bars, let's tackle them separately. With the outdoor bars or music emitting from those businesses, from there we would tackle it probably with our noise ordinance, which would fall in line where we would need to take readings, from the property line. We'd have to have a complainant and that type thing. As far as from our vehicles, what we find is easier is there's actually state statute for the sound coming out of the vehicles. When you hit them with the uniform traffic citation, it's a little bit, for us, it's easier to prove. And it's also cost effective towards the violator. So that's probably what we write for as far as with the vehicles. And there again, with the businesses, once we get the complaint, then we'll assess that complaint and we'll move forward with the noise case.
Okay, because I know that Mayor Latham and, the past years, it's always been about family friendly and kid friendly and all that. And there's certain things that we in the downtown area, I would like to consider us maybe focusing on. I know that every time I ask you guys to do something, you're like, oh my gosh, I should be doing my job, not, giving people, smack on the hand. But the noise, it's getting bad again. The cars going up and down the streets with their noise. I know that some of the bars are blaring music outside. And that actually brings me to a question maybe Bill can answer as well. But are we following the Jacksonville mainland rules, or do we have our own rules when it comes to outside eating and with this COVID stuff? And are we following anything in particular? Are we just following the mainland? Because in town, they're letting anyone and everyone eat outside, which does cause, different violations to what we would have at the beaches. But I'm not sure. I know they're kind of hand in hand because they do create noise, bars at night, drinking, I'm just curious. Do you guys know if we're following the mainland and if we're doing anything going forward with the noise that's going up and down the streets with cars?
We do have separate regulations for outdoor seating. They're governed by our land development code. So the suspension by COJ of their enforcement of their zoning regulations for outdoor dining do not affect us in the city of Jacksonville Beach. During
so we're
this
not
COVID,
Okay.
No, ma'am. During this COVID experience, and I discussed this with the city manager, I got the marching orders from our city manager. We are, at least during this experience, when people are allowed to gradually open up, we are being a little bit relaxed on if you put a two-top outside just so people can come in and eat and you're otherwise delivery only. During this COVID, we're being fairly relaxed on those enforcement because it has not been a major issue. We had people go out, our staff went out 2 weeks ago, right when Jacksonville relaxed there, to find out, and we found out we had 4 establishments that were doing, they had outdoor, 3 of them had outdoor seating, and each one of them had put a couple of tables outside of their normal outside seating area. So our onus was to make sure it wasn't causing a traffic or pedestrian safety concern. But other than that, we are not citing them during this COVID response.
And that's your team, Bill. Your team, Bill, is doing that, right? It's not the officers doing that. The police department.
Yes,
you
ma'am.
guys are.
That's correct. That's code enforcement officer. Yes, ma'am. It's code enforcement. My building inspectors. Yes, ma'am.
That's where I was getting confused. I didn't know who did what. I figured the noise was going to be the police department because that falls under nuisance, but then the extra traffic and whatnot out in the aisles and the sidewalks, I was just curious where was that? That's at code enforcement.
Okay. And we're reaching out to them and we're letting them know that going forward, as soon as we get back to whatever the new normal is, then all rules back on and we're going. But again, it hasn't, to our knowledge, been a major problem within our city.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry to bother you. It's just one of the things I wanted to follow up on.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Also, Francis, one of the things that we did, I got with the fire marshal, and because when the governor was changing when they started opening some of the restaurants back up, what could open, what couldn't open, and what the occupancy was going to be 25%, 50, or even 75%, because he had all of those in the rephased opening plan. I got with the fire marshal myself, and we went down to make sure that we were on the same page. So all the businesses basically in our city, but predominantly the ones in the downtown area, the ones that we would be looking to either get complaints on because they're more visible. We came up with those numbers. I actually printed those out, those occupancies for 25, 50, and 75%. Therefore, we could post that on the windows. So if we get a complaint my officers that come up there, they don't have to take, okay, well, if it normally seats 200 people, but it's 25%, this is the numbers. We have those numbers and they are posted on our windows and they are available for the officers, the fire marshal, and for anyone else that can see in any of our establishments here in the city. So we did go ahead and do that. I also have the ones for the 75%. So if we go to 75% before they open fully, we can go ahead and put those back on as well. As far as this past weekend, I will tell you, with our enforcement in the downtown area, we issued over 100 citations just in the downtown area. These are traffic citations. These were for music, for seatbelt violations. A lot of the violations, I don't want to say from cruising, but issues that were caused from the vehicles really between Beach Boulevard and say 6th Avenue and 6th Street, 6th Avenue North on 1st Street. So, and we do have another task force I've actually put together, and we're going to attack it this weekend as well.
Okay, I thank you. I just wanted, it's hard to see a little kid jump when a motorcycle revs its engine right next to him and it makes them cry. And if we're trying to be family friendly, there's got to be some kind of control of some noise. I know we can't, I just making sure we're doing something about it. That's all.
Gary, you got a question? Gary, you have a question, Mark?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I would just ask that we keep in mind this South Beach District also. There's been a significant increase in vehicle noises down here. So I would just ask that the police department, it's not just the downtown area, but also the South Beach District that needs to be looked at.
Okay, I can pass that on to some of the other officers as well.
Thank you.
Mark, I have a question. Before the parks opened up, were we having issues with people in the skateboard park with before they had permission to do that?
You know, I will say this, President, when we were told to close the beaches and some of the parks, I've been here 31 years. We all were like, oh my gosh, okay, here we go. Believe it or not, even at our skateboard park, did we have people that were coming in when they were supposed to be there? We did, but all in all, we did not have a problem. When we closed the beaches completely, we came up with a plan. Let's get 6 officers, 3 north, 3 south. Let's make the announcements. Let's see what happens. We were all shocked to see everybody listen to it. When we closed it and we were able to open it in the middle of the day and we had to close it back until in the afternoon. And then with the skateboard park as well, we really have we had some violators? Absolutely. But was it a big problem? It really was not. It was not near what any of us expected.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question of Mark before we move back to Bill? Okay, Mark, thank you very much.
Can I be dismissed for the night? Hang on.
You can be dismissed.
Okay, y'all have a good night.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Bill? Gary, if I can get you to mute your mic again.
Yes, sir.
Bill, if you continue.
Okay, yes, sir. I touched on the last one I talked about was the Dolphin Depot project. That's the last of the private sector projects downtown. One thing that the CRA has no financial involvement in the Pier reconstruction project, but some of you may or may not know that crane has sat idle right at the mean high water line. Construction has stopped. They have a permit. The permit went through first round comments. They are still awaiting their resubmittal comments from U.S. Fisheries before they can move over the water. They anticipate getting positive comments, but they haven't got them back yet. They were due May 1st. So technically U.S. Fisheries is behind in getting back comments, but they cannot move forward with construction until they get the approval from U.S. Fisheries. So that's why the Pier construction project appears to be idle right now. The other couple I wanted, 3 other things I wanted to touch about downtown, just so you know they are still on the radar. The Art, you talked about the miscellaneous concrete punch list that you came up with. I think it was last fall. The short-term answer was that the contractor we had online for city concrete repairs quit because they weren't making any money. We let that out for bid to subsequent bidders. I think we're waiting to receive the bids. COVID has suspended that bid process or the allowance for us to flush out these bids. As soon as this goes away, I believe, and Dennis Barron, I believe, is online, or Marty, one of the public works people, can talk. We will get the concrete contractor online. That's one of the first top priority items, is just getting that punch list out. So that's where we are with the concrete repairs. It's not gone. I don't know if anybody asked, but the pressure washing, and that is in our annual budget. We have a contract. So if you notice or not, they're down here pressure washing somewhere in the downtown almost constantly. I've seen them out in Latham Plaza probably twice within the last 4 months. So the pressure washing is going well. It's within the budget that we've put forth. So until we get feedback that it needs to be done more frequently, we're budgeted to do this ongoing maintenance, kind of like the trimming of the palm trees. And that is going on. So I didn't want people to think we just did it once and we're done. That's an annual reoccurring event. The last is the poured and paste mulch project. And I'm working with Parks and Recreation right now to do a pilot area instead of just saying, okay, we're going to yank out all the mulch all over downtown. We want to do a pilot area. I'm looking out my window right now at the palm trees, the big palms we see right along First Street between where Baja's was and where the hotel is. It would include that and at least the First Avenue street end. Get a color choice. We've got the black poured in place mulch out there, but if there's something from the CRA, if you would like a different color out there for this pilot project list, if you want to suggest a color, or if you want me to get a palette that they have available, and we'll go ahead and include it with this pilot area. But we are going forward with that because it makes Public Works' job a lot easier because they typically do their debris removal. They'll blow it to get it discharged, and then they'll collect it. When you do it on this artificial mulch, you just do it once, where if you're blowing on real mulch or on the coquina type finish, it gets all over everywhere. So Public Works has actually requested that we've done that as well. So I'm going to get that poured in place project. We'll get that. That will have to come before the CRA for authorization. And pending what I find out from purchasing, I don't think there's a threshold below which we still have to get council approval, but I can't imagine having a hiccup with that. So that's where we are. These are miscellaneous projects below the major, but it's something I figured you'd ask about. And I want to touch on one other project, and it's the major infrastructure project we have going down in the south end, the dual culvert replacement for the open ditch that's jammed in between Butler and Marsh Landing Parkway right in front of Longhorn. That project is I believe, be due to be completed in July. They're on schedule. I don't know if y'all paid any attention to it. I've got some progress photos for the construction that Dennis Dupree has taken, and I'll be happy to share them with you. But that project has gone on schedule so far. And that's the major infrastructure project we have going on in the south end. The next infrastructure, this is a good segue. The next project we'll have going on in the south end is the completion of the Ocean Terrace area drainage improvements. That's what we authorized in February to modify that design contract to give them some more money to prepare a study on the alternatives of putting the multi-purpose path on the south side or the north side of Jacksonville Drive. And if you don't mind, unless you still want to talk about the projects, that's a good segue into that topic on the agenda.
Hold on a second, Bill. Before we go to discussion item B, let's finish with A. Question I have, you said that our concrete person, whoever had the bid or was awarded the bid, kind of walked away from it all. Can we do the same thing as we mentioned earlier? If there's a person that's got that bid in Duval County or even in St. Johns County, can we not tap into that bid and have somebody come do that concrete work we're talking about because it's based on that specific bid?
Yes, sir. I believe we can. It's a Public Works contract because the contract that they hold is not just for the CRA, it's for the entire city. I'd direct that to Dennis Barron. I'm not sure if Mr. Barron's in the panelist group on this, but somebody from Public Works is it. If not, they'll get it through this recording or through the minutes. I will find out about that because you're right. That would have made it quicker. But for whatever reason, I do know that they went out for bid. And I believe this time, I think they're selecting more than one contractor. So we've got a fallback. But that's something that's really something. The details of that's in Public Works.
I got a couple of hands going up, but Dennis is on the line. So Dennis, can you answer that question?
Yes, sir, I can. Actually, that bid for that concrete contract, concrete and blacktop contract was suspended because of COVID. It was opened up a week ago. That deadline, I believe, is this Thursday or Friday. So all bids will be in. It'll be in purchasing to actually be ready to award a contract. We got a very long list of stuff.
Can't hear you.
Dennis
can't hear you. Dennis, we can't hear you.
Okay,
there you
can
go.
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Did you hear any of that?
No.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I didn't touch anything, but it went to mute again. So the contract was out for bid due to the COVID. It was stopped and held up. It's been held up for several weeks. It went back out to bid last week. I believe that bid closes at the end of this week. So we will be prepared to award a concrete and blacktop contract within the next week or so. I know we do have some continuous contracts out there for some contractors that are in town doing some work. We're actually looking at a different sidewalk in a different area. But I think we really have been kind of held up with our last contractor. I don't know that he quit, but I believe he went out of business because he wasn't making any money. So unfortunately, we were held with nobody to have a contract with. So this has been kind of a long process for us as well. We've got some projects that are awaiting curbs being poured that we can't get the blacktop put back because we don't have a contractor to do that. So I believe that's going to be completed at the end of this week, and we'll hopefully have something moving ahead pretty fast.
Thank you, sir. Jeff, did you have a question?
Yes, for Bill. What about the Dix Height projects, the lighting, the wayfaring? We haven't heard from them or anything about them for quite a while.
You're muted, Bill. We can't hear you.
I know, I'm
There you
trying
go.
to find my mouse. I wasn't talking, I was trying to find the mute button. Yes, sir. I recently met with Beaches Energy Service to determine whether or not they would accomplish the lighting repairs or the lighting plan in-house, or if they were going to go out to bid for it. Because even if they go out to bid for it, they're ultimately going to be the ones to maintain it. So I'm hoping we can get that done in-house. We've got the Wayfaring Signage, which would have to go out for bids. We'll have to get 3 different bids for that. We have the construction documents and that plan ready to go out for bid. And the other, or what's the other 2? The site furnishings and bike plans, that's predominantly installation of equipment. So we think we can pair those together. And if we can, I'm going to get with Public Works and we're going to let that out and get a contractor for that. We hope to have those accomplished within this budget year, at least started this budget year. So the only one that I'm a little dubious on, because I have no background in, is the art master plan. And I've reached out to Dix Height to get some contacts for maybe, just as you're talking about Jim Gilmore doing this global level consulting for the downtown, there are people that just do these art deployment plans in the downtown areas. We can pick at little pieces of that art plan, like doing a mural on the police storage building. I could go out and get 3 requests, 3 bids for different art elements for that. And we could decide as a group which one we want to select. That's fine. Once we get into the areas of the art plan that involve private properties, Jeff, one of the private properties is the enclosure on the west side of Metropolitan. I'm not even sure what it encloses. I don't know if it encloses a generator or not, but that was one area that they thought would be suitable for a mural. That's going to require us to reach out to your association to see if you're willing to do that. But we are going forward with the art plan. That's just the slowest one for me. I have 0 experience in that, so I'm reaching out for outside help for that.
Okay. Well, first, the enclosure is a compactor. And
The one with the 2-story wall?
Yeah. So we'd be happy to, entertain something on that. But second, the update you just gave on the lighting and the wayfaring, I have my notes from a couple of years ago, and basically that's the same update we got 2 years ago, and it was supposed to be done by the end of the year, 18.
After you got the final plan document that showed what the different components were going to be, the contractors or the Dix Height consultants went away and produced the construction design documents and the bid documents for each one of those plans. We just got those back in. I think we got the final set in December, and we were directed by the city manager at that time that it was to be an internal staff of administrative staff, Public Works because they do the maintenance, Park and Recreation because they do some of the maintenance, Police Department because they have the lighting and the other issues, and planning from our side. I reached out to Heather Eiler, my senior planner, because she's got an art background. So we vetted out those final construction documents, and they were finalized in, as I said, the fall of last year. Yeah, the fall, right before Christmas of last year. So I've got those hard plans, but those hard plans aren't a departure from what the CRA and the council saw as the last bound document that contained all of those elements. It's literally just the refinement of those plans. I'd be happy to share those with you.
Well, it just seems a very, very slow process from something that we approved a long time ago.
I understand part of the construction documentation problem. You'll remember one of those components is the pier entryway design. The city council asked, because at the time the city council was very highly involved with that. They asked for a second design component on that. We've gotten that. And that's the only plan I'm still waiting on getting the final product for, is that pier entryway design. And I've reached out to Dix Height to have them come up at one of hopefully the next or one of the next two meetings, and show you what the refinement of that second alternative is. I think y'all saw it because it was in the final multi-plan document. It was a more of an organic feature at the Pier entryway, had the coquino boulders. They're refining that, but it's also now drawing out all the way to First Street. And you haven't seen that detail yet. And before they get too far, I want to vet that with y'all.
So why is the lighting plan dependent on that being finalized?
It's not. That's what I said. I've already met with Beaches Energy. I'm waiting for Beaches Energy to give me feedback about whether they're going to do that in-house or not. It's appropriated in this year's budget. If you'll remember the year-end true-up budget, we put dollar amounts for those different projects.
Right.
It was based on the remaining funds we had in the downtown. So I'm not saying that each one of those projects is fully funded for this year, but they at least have seed money to start. I think the lighting plan may be over, except, well, it's between the art plan and the lighting plan, which are going to be the most cost intensive. The other plans, I believe, will be full or are fully funded within this budget. But the art master plan, it's going to be the CRA determining for, okay, we've got 5 or 6 key sculptural element locations. We need to establish a budget. How much do we want to spend on each one of those? And we've got some money planted in this year's budget to start those projects, but it may not fully fund them. Whereas the lighting plan, as expensive as it is, and this is off the top of my head, I believe their estimate was in the $300,000 range. I don't know if it was fully funded in this year, but part of the efficiency of that is whether or not Beaches Energy is willing to take that on. We'll still pay, the CRA would still pay their level of work in-house, but it may be, it may be a little more cost efficient for us to do it in-house. And I hope it is. I just haven't gotten back with them on the response for that. I met with them 3 weeks ago.
Gary, you had a question?
Yes, sir. Bill, I'd like to sit down and see the plans related to this site signage and lighting and so forth, because I'm not familiar with it. And I guess my real question to you is, if there is a redevelopment around the pier, my assumption is that that development won't occur probably until the end of the construction of the pier itself. So we're probably another 1.5 years out before that activity really gets started.
That is true. However, the construction documents will be right before, if you, I don't know how familiar you are with what that area looks like right now. The actual pier entryway that's going to be redone is taken up in the pier laydown area for the pier construction project. And you're right, the actual work for that pier entryway cannot take place until they're done doing the work, because not only are they working on their trestle, they're out working on the active pier. But they know that, but that still doesn't mean we can't get the construction documentation and everything ready for that. That's the only remaining work that Dix Heights doing right now.
Right. No, I understand that. I'm just trying to put a timetable to this, that we're really talking about another 1.5 years before we really implement this this pier access plan that's out there somewhere. Okay.
Yes, sir. We call it the pier entryway enhancement plan, but you are correct. It'll be 18 months. As soon as the pier's done and Spring Hill, actually we could do the work while Spring Hill Suites is under construction, but they have a certain common share area of these laydown areas. So the Spring Hill Suites people can use the Piers project area for their pumper trucks when they pump the floor slabs. So there's a little bit of symbiotic use of those, but you're right. The projects will have to be substantially complete. And I don't know if I told you when I gave you the Spring Hill Suites update, that project's got an estimated 14-month construction timeframe. So I believe, pending their bank letting their funding out, they may finish just ahead of the pier, but generally in the same timeframe.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Francis?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Since we're talking about the pier entry, isn't the parking lot at the pier CRA property?
No, I believe it's city.
Is it city?
I can
I just
check.
want to
You can talk-
verify.
Sorry, I just lost you. I'm going to go off screen for a second because I need to check that. It's just pinging on the property appraiser. I can still hear the audio though. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would like, I think as a council, maybe we should maybe give 2 cents as to, I know if it's not ours and it's the city, at least we can say these are some of the ideas that fit inside the plan when we get our plan back from the attorney that we hired. But if for some reason I thought it was our property, I could be wrong. If it is, and we have this time frame that Gary just kind of put a big stamp on, should we not?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So who's it owned
Go
by?
ahead. City of Jacksonville Beach.
So it's Jack's Beach. I mean, I know that the way that things used to be is we would say, would it fit inside of the plan, and then the council would have to prove it. Even though I don't think that's the way it really goes. If it's owned by the city, is it not the responsibility of the CRA to provide them some ideas that they should use that property for, and then we can have it done and worked on at the same time, so the whole area is available at the same time-ish? So we're not going through another couple years of construction once those two places are done? Anybody, I mean, is it not our responsibility to at least give them ideas?
To me, I say yes,
Yeah.
but I don't know what happened to Bill Mann. I think he was checking something online and I think we lost him.
Yeah, I mean, I think we as a council, if I were a resident of Jackson, just until he comes back on, if I was a resident, and I am a resident, and I was always downtown, and there's all this construction going on, and we have put everyone through so much construction, it would be nice. Is Bill back? Nope.
No, he's not.
It would be nice to be able
sorry.
to.
One bad click and I got lost. I'm back. I apologize.
Sorry. So
No,
Bill, what I
no,
was
my
saying,
bad.
and Bill, what I was saying is that I feel like it might be our responsibility to recommend something for the council to do in that space that fits inside the plan, so that our residents don't have to go through 2 years of the pier being built and the entryway being built, and then when they do decide to build something there, it's like construction again, because we literally have had, like, I don't know, 10 years of construction, it feels like. Is that appropriate action of the CRA to go ahead and make a recommendation? Hey, this is what we think you should do. This is the time frame we're thinking, so it can at least be brought to the council?
Yes, ma'am. That's what we're actually, once we get the cost out, the only thing we won't do is actually go out for bid to it until we have the active construction year we're going in. We don't want to award the bid 18 months early and then find out construction costs went off the charts. But yes, ma'am. And in this case, the pier entryway, I believe we had joint buy-in from both groups on that concept. What I was
I'm
talking about,
the parking lot, not the entryway, like the whole parking lot.
yes, ma'am. When we get the information back from Shepherd Associates and we find out that that area is one of the unfinished or yet a remaining to be completed components of the plan, yeah, we'd be remiss not to point it out to City Council. Hey, this is what the vision of the plan is for that area. I will tell you one thing though about that parking lot. We are on several levels bound to maintain and not diminish our level of ocean access parking. It's both through our comprehensive plan and also through our the beach renourishment with the Corps of Engineers. So if you're talking, even in that plan, even in the approved redevelopment plan, if it calls for wholesale privatization of that parking, then the onus is on us to provide replacement parking in the same quantity within the same vicinity. So does that make sense?
There's plenty of stuff in the old plan. There's plenty of stuff in the old plan that we as a group could talk about what could be a nice addition to the side of the pier there. And we've already like beat the whole idea of a parking lot to death and paid parking. And it's something we'll have to address soon, but getting extra parking down there is not a problem in my opinion. But I do think the problem, especially for nuisances for residents, is having to deal with another couple of years of construction. I just think it makes sense to just hit it all out, just get it all done now and give some kind of guidance, in our opinion, to them. So maybe something can be done. So I don't know how to get that on the agenda to do.
Are you talking about perhaps like a mixed use project that would keep the parking there, but would also like activate well, if you activate the street front and the boardwalk front, you're just talking about parking above it, basically taking the existing surface spaces and stacking them above some active use on the first floor. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
I would say remove parking completely to another section, but still provide parking within walking distance and utilize the space with something that's in the original plan. Like there's a whole bunch of things I can say. There's park use, there's, multi-use. It's like a little village, there's little villages, for like buying stuff. I mean, there's lots of ideas that are in the original plan that would look really great there, but you would have to displace the parking to across the street where we own property across the street too. It could be an agreement saying, hey, we will do this as long as you will replace the parking with X, right? So I just think that discussion needs to be made, and I think we need to figure out what we would like to propose so that they can do it sooner than later, because I would hate for them to go through all this construction on First Street to have it all nice and pretty, and then it go right back behind a fence. That's just something I'd like to put on the agenda for us as a group to at least discuss. And I guess we have to wait until we hear back from our attorney.
Yep. Well, the attorneys that are doing the plan consolidation work, yeah, I think that would be prudent to do that, because that way we can see if we're on footing to say, okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, but I like that sooner than later, please, sir.
Okay,
All right, well, there's a lot of this stuff that we're still waiting to hear from the attorney, and we're still waiting for our employee to come along. And I know we keep kicking this can down the road, but those are the things that are still, it's hurry up and wait. Any other questions of Bill? We're still on item number A, which is downtown CRA. Any questions before we move down to the south end? Item B. Okay, Bill, let's move on down to the south end. What you guys are doing for that drainage project?
okay. Hold on, I got visibility issues. Hold on a second. Can you still see me?
Cannot see
y'all
you,
still-
but we can hear you. We cannot see you,
Hold
but
on.
we can hear you.
Okay, well, you don't need to see me. That's, as long as I can see you, there's just, I got a pop-up screen. I can't figure out how to get it off right now. Okay, this is the second item is the Jacksonville Drive multi-purpose path alternatives. And as I've already brought up a couple of times, the last action item we had as a CRA was on February 24th, and we authorized the Hanson Consulting Firm as part of their Ocean Terrace Drainage Improvements Project to study the alternative of putting a multi-purpose path on the south side of Jacksonville Drive, generally between Grande and South Beach Parkway, or as opposed to their current thinking, whereas they were trying to, well, I may have it backwards, but anyway, we've got Brian McKee here with Hanson Engineering, and he's going to run through this PowerPoint presentation to let you know just what the results of their analysis of that proposal was. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. McKee.
Hale, did you want to say anything before we started?
No, that's all right, Brian. If you're good and everyone's good, if you'll run through the presentation, and then, I'm the project engineer here at Public Works, and myself and Brian and Bill will do our best to answer questions, and Dennis Barron's on as well. So Brian did a pretty extensive analysis to see how best to use that right of way and what options we would need to look at if we chose one side of the road versus the other. So he's going to show you some of that right now.
All right. So this started, as the drainage project. And as part of that, we were going to be replacing Jacksonville Drive because the drainage pipes and stuff that were going under the roadway. And with that, we were going to have sidewalks on both sides of the road, 6-foot sidewalks. And then Cale approached me at one point, the Public Works guys did, about improving the sidewalk on the south side to make it a shared use path. And since then, I guess there's been some interest in having the shared use path on the north side of the road. So the purpose we put this presentation together for was just to summarize the impacts of constructing the 8-foot wide concrete path. Actually, is Jacob handling the slides? Can you go ahead and flip the slide, Jacob? There you go. So basically the purpose is to present the summary of the impacts of constructing that 8-foot wide concrete path on the north side versus the south side. And in presenting this detail, hopefully it helps the city to determine which side of the road they would like to have it on. Just to outline what I'm going to present here, it's going to be basically a summary of the current design that I just mentioned, and then issues that we see with the 8-foot path on the north side of Jacksonville Drive, and really a basis for realigning the road through that path on the north side. Also, I'll summarize the impacts of Jacksonville Drive realignment to accommodate that path on the north side, and then we'll summarize it with additional costs to do that realignment of Jacksonville Drive. Jacob, next slide. All right, so the current design, if you'll see here, the roadway maintains the existing alignment. And you'll see off to the right, we had a slide that showed, or an image that showed what the proposed typical section looked like as you're looking east. So you have the 8-foot path on that south side of the road with some separation, and you had possibly up to a 6-foot sidewalk on the north side. So basically, we're going to accommodate pedestrian facilities on both sides of the road. We would use the existing pavement location that's there today. And the existing topography actually allowed for better separation between the sidewalk and the back of the curb. As you'll see in the example on the photo there we have, kind of shows how a path could meander between the back of the sidewalk or the back of the curb out to the right of way, and it's kind of weaving around other miscellaneous, such as utility poles or anything like that that could be there. But it'll give it more of a aesthetically pleasing trail, I guess, if you'd call it that. And so it would allow for, like it says here, up to an 8-foot on the south side and a 6-foot on the north side. And also, we just wanted to emphasize that providing pedestrian facilities on north and south meets FHWA's guidance. Whenever you're providing sidewalks or pathways, they recommend putting them on both sides of the roads, and particularly if you're near schools or transit locations. Next slide. All right, and here, this is basically showing some issues that we would have with putting that sidewalk or that 8-foot wide path on the north side of the existing alignment. The path would have to be at the back of the curb, and it would also limit widths at driveway crossings. It basically, with the 6-foot we already have designed, we're having to shrink those sidewalk width crossings at the driveways to accommodate vehicle movements in and out of those driveways so that they don't hang up. And also, if you see, these are just representative pictures that are, I think you might notice, are along 9th Street, but you have the sidewalk right against the back of curb and you have the little wall there. So really, it's not aesthetically pleasing or actually user-friendly for people using a path. So these are things that would be restrictions due to the right-of-way that's out there and the slope ties that would make us have to put something similar to what you see in the picture out there. Basically, the crossings on the driveways, we're shrinking those down to meet ADA slope requirements. And right now, the current design would have them about 3 foot wide. And that would allow for vehicles to enter in and out without dragging. And basically, what we would need to be looking at would to provide an 8-foot consistent path through here and meet ADA requirements through the whole length of the project right now, the limits, we'd have to realign the roadway to the south. Next slide. In this slide here, you're going to see basically what we would have out there now designed is what we have designed is the 6-foot sidewalk width. You can see how in that first picture on your left, the 6-foot sidewalk results in steeper driveway and vehicle will drag. So we've had to shrink that up like it shows on the right side when you cross the driveway to be only 3 foot wide. What that enables us to do is kind of flatten the slope out some, maintain more of what the existing driveway slope is so that vehicles don't drag under the new condition. And this is just an issue that we've seen before. You go out and you do some work and somebody's vehicle didn't drag before, they're gonna come out, or even if it did drag before the construction, they're probably gonna come out later and say that it didn't drag before, but now it drags under the improvements. So basically when we go out there, we like to try to maintain the existing slope that's on the driveway or flatten those out. Next slide. This slide here kind of shows our simulation for when we did it for the 8-foot path. And the 8-foot results in the steeper driveways, and again shows the vehicles dragging and actually having conflicts at probably 2 locations there when you're crossing that new path on the north side. And then on the right side there, you'll see basically with the realignment and shifting it out, it enables us to flatten the driveway slopes out, keep them more to what's existing, and the vehicles won't drag when they're entering in and out of their driveways. Next slide. All right, this just kind of sets the stage for what existing Jacksonville Drive alignment is today. You can see pretty straight, have a little shift right there at the east end when you're coming off South Beach Parkway. Next slide. And this here, kind of transitioning in, shows what we would be looking at for that realignment to the south side of the roadway. And this would allow us, like I said, to provide a constant 8-foot width path with 2 foot of side between the path and the back of curb on that north side of the road. And it allows for the driveway ties, as we just discussed, so it'll be either equal or better than what's there today to prevent vehicles from dragging. And then with the shift, we would get away with that tight constraint we showed in that section earlier, like on 9th Street, where the sidewalk was right against the back of curb and had the wall right at the back side of the sidewalk. Next slide. With this, though, comes some other complications. There are multiple underground utilities that fall under that, well, are actually out there on the existing south edge right now. And when we would shift that pavement over, it would cause them to fall under the existing pavement. And the utility agencies typically don't want their utilities under the pavement. Thus, they would result in costly relocations for those utilities that are on the south side. And there is numerous utilities on the south side of the road that consist of fiber optic cables and electric and so on. I know Beaches Energy Services is overhead right now on that south side. They're looking to go underground. So everything we shift to the south just kind of narrows the envelope there that allows the utilities to go into even after we shift this road. And with this, it doesn't really give you any ability to meander our path out to the right of way, back closer to the curb and twist like we showed in that picture at the beginning. And Also, there'd be no pedestrian facility sidewalk along the south side due to the restricted width that we would have in the slope ties that we have to make back into existing. So you can see here that this here would just realign the road and would allow for a sidebar, a wider path, 8-foot path on that north side of the road. Next slide. And here in this slide, we're basically summarizing the cost differences and additional costs to realign the drive and provide 8-foot on the north side versus maintaining the way it is today, the existing alignment, and the 8-foot path on the south side would be approximately about $150,000 more to locate the proposed sidewalk or concrete path to that north side than it would to locate it on the south side. There'd also be additional costs associated with relocating existing utilities that are on that south side of the roadway. Next slide. And there you go. So that just any questions now, and there's kind of the contact information for anybody if they have any questions after the meeting.
All right, well, Jacob, if I can get you to take this slide presentation down so I can look at everybody. There we go. First question I have is, it would seem to me, I get what you're talking about, everything on the north side, and my first thought process was, if everything's on the north side, it's a clean shot going from the homes all the way out to the ocean. But it seems to me if you still have to do all the undergrounding and you still have to do the drainage project on the south side, wouldn't it be, and you can level everything off so you don't have to worry about all that dipping and stuff that you're referring to if you just kept it all on the south side?
Yeah, the thing is though, with what we're doing with the improvements, we're adding curb and gutter into the roadway. And with that, in the way the surrounding area comes in, we have to actually, if you think about it, the curb is 6 inches high. So with the edge of pavement, we'll actually have to drop that down 6 inches to get the water flow to still come over that curb and gutter so we can get into our drainage system. So really, we're kind of constrained with what we can do with the road. To level everything out, like you're saying, we would basically be raising everything up, flatten it out without a curb and gutter, and we wouldn't allow for the drainage to come into the road. So really dropping that roadway to get the curb in is what makes, and bumping that sidewalk out makes those slopes steeper. Otherwise, we would have several drainage systems out there to actually collect off-site systems that would run parallel to the system we're putting on the south side of the road now. So we basically multiply things by just a lot more drainage features to grab water that can't naturally flow into those gutter lines.
All right, I have a couple of questions. First, Gary, followed by Francis.
Just a question in reference to the dragging of the vehicles coming out of the driveways. We're only talking about 5 driveways. Of the 5 driveways, 3 of them are basically flat coming out to the street. There are only 2 of them that have some slope to it, which to me doesn't look like it's that severe. Is there really a need to do a road realignment?
The main purpose of the realignment, like I said, is to be able to keep that 8-foot width across the driveways too, because with us dropping it, that's 6 inches, and then we have to hold a 2% cross slope on that sidewalk. It puts everything down and kind of leaves it flat. And if you look at some of those slides, I know you guys have hard copies of them, but you'll see that those few houses are really close to the right of way. There's not a lot once you get there to their properties behind the sidewalk. So you really have a lot of limited distance to make your ties and everything and make it all work out. You can keep
Again, there's only 2 driveways that really have an issue. The other 3 are flat coming out when you drive by there.
Correct. The others do get worse just because of dropping the 6 inches for the curb and gutter to allow the drainage to flow in. That's what happens with the flatter ones.
Yeah. And then if you reload to the adjustment to the south of the existing pavement or of the pavement, the realignment, excuse me, you would still have to deal with utilities underneath the sidewalks and stuff like that. I mean, that's ultimately where they would end up. There's still, in either concept, you're going to have to do utility realignments, in my opinion. I just don't see us getting away from that.
Yeah, it will be regardless of the way you go. It's just a matter of the utility companies will be more, I guess, cooperative if you have it under a sidewalk versus under the road because of maintenance of traffic for future improvements or any future maintenance on their facility. There will be some relocations associated with what we've got designed right now, but when you put the whole path over there, or when you put the path on the north and shift the whole thing down, it pretty much gets their whole runs down through there. So it just is the extent of the impact is what it is.
And I guess
Mr.
my
Moore,
last
did you-
comment, I'm sorry.
Gary, hold on a second. Mr. Moore, did you have a comment to answer that question?
Yeah, in general, there are exceptions, but generally, most utilities, I know especially for ourselves, water and sewer, most utilities are a little more inclined, as Brian said, to have their underground conduits, underground facilities under sidewalks, because if something has to be repaired or something goes wrong under there, you're not taking out one or more travel lanes or impacting vehicular traffic. So we wouldn't need to relocate to nearly to the extent if it's going to be under a path or sidewalk as we would if it's going to be under a traffic lane.
And I guess my last comment just quickly is on the north side of Jacksonville Drive, if you're trying to do the path there, it looked like you'd end up having to do more major tree removal than you would on the south side. There were some larger trees along there, and they would probably be impacted by whichever scheme we ended up pursuing.
And we're still talking about the park currently in the project area, correct? West of South Beach Parkway?
Yes, that's correct.
There are some trees down as you get toward the western part of that and Grande and onto America. There's some vegetation in the right of way, and we would need to, work with the homeowner adjacent to that in moving some of that. But as far as the other trees, I believe, Brian, you kind of looked at that in the field. We have more right of way there, and we have the opportunity to meander that path a little bit. And I'm not sure if we would have to impact any of the, major larger trees on that south side.
There's not as much on the south side. I mean, there's very little really, and it's most of it's scrub brush type stuff versus on the north side where you've got some larger trees. Thank you.
Yeah, and Cal, you're
Francis?
correct. As you got west of Grande, you do have more ability because of the topography out there to kind of get around those trees and probably not do near the impact of those. I know east of Grande, there's crepe myrtles, I think small stuff like that, but nothing significant that would be impacted on that north side of the road from Grande east to South Beach.
Francis, followed by Jeff.
Sorry, I'm sitting here talking to myself. So I just want to make sure I understand. We were talking about, originally it was the south side, now we're talking the north side. I did notice there's a couple houses that looks like your little red line or blue line are actually over their fence. Did I see that wrong on the north corner? When you have your drawings where it's like right smack against the fence line? I mean, what I'm getting at is, are we getting really, really close to houses on that side? Are there like these going to be in their window?
On the north side of the road?
Yes.
The north side of the road, the sidewalk will pretty much be where it is today, probably just another 2-3 feet added to the back of it.
Okay. Okay. And then are we still as a group considering making a recommendation for the city's property that's on the west side of the street and utilizing our small property as parking? Are we a group going to discuss that so they can incorporate that in this whole plan, or can we not? Bill, maybe can we not incorporate it as part of this plan so it's all done at the same time? Is Bill not here?
No, I'm here. Sorry. Am I not? You can't see me? I'm sorry.
I can't. That's
Can you see
okay.
me?
But I mean, are we not
Okay,
able?
wait. Can I answer? I think I understand your question. First off, one of the list of the possible remaining impossible projects that Gary came up with for the south end, one of them is the disposition of the CRA lot on the southwest corner of the intersection, as well as the city-owned lots along the north side. Those are plausible projects going forward. I'm not sure. Did you say parking on the CRA lot on the south side?
Yeah, like Yeah, if I mean,
What
and
the
we as a
purpose of
group
the
haven't
park
really
is.
discussed, what we would do, but one thing I proposed was to do that. And if we're making all this construction with the sidewalk, it would be nice to be able to incorporate, if we're going, if I understand, we are still talking about north side, is that right? The north side of the street? Is that
In
correct?
terms of the path?
The path? Yes.
Well, we still have the two options. That's where we are right now is, hey, this is the result of the analysis.
But the analysis, is it leaning that that you guys are recommending, or Brian's group is recommending going to the north? Is that what I'm understanding it to be?
I think at this point, they're asking for
go
feedback from the
south.
CRA to understand what your positions are. Yes, ma'am. And all I wanted to say about that was, and I was going to say it when we got into the discussion about the possible projects, is if that southwest corner becomes a pocket park as opposed to parking, first off, I'm not sure what the parking would be there to serve. But number two, if you've got a multi-purpose path and a system of sidewalks that's leading you to that intersection, that makes a great location for a pocket park right there at that corner. And that parcel is sizable enough to do that. And then the multi-purpose path, if it's on the south side, it simply crosses over to the north side. And the next component, when we talk about connectivity, and Gary asked about use of the city property, multi-purpose paths don't need to just connect east to west. There's a good opportunity to put a multi-purpose path on the west side of South Beach Parkway that connects Jacksonville Drive all the way to Osceola. And if we do that, that becomes an intersection both for cars and for bicyclists and pedestrians. So whether the path is on the north side or south side, I still think there's a viable active option for that CRA parcel on the southwest corner as opposed to just making it for parking, which I'm not sure what the parking would serve.
So I guess what I'm getting to, Bill, is you can remind me the amount of money, but we have a lot of money coming into the South Beach CRA funds, and we have a lot of money going to the downtown area. And
Right.
Last year we gave up a lot of money, and I'm trying to find a way we can put something on the books saying that we as a group want to recommend doing this. This is where the money we would offer to put towards those things, including the path. And I think that once again, like the last thing, I would like people to have to deal with the headache of construction once and not like 8 times. So I just thought maybe, are we going to try to incorporate, and I don't even know the process, to the recommendation for the city's property?
I think at this point, it would unnecessarily delay the progress and the work going forward on this drainage project, which I do think is a totally separate project. And I don't think it would compromise the ability to do the pocket, if it's a pocket park or parking lot on the south side. I think that could be a separate breakout project. Number one, I think there needs to be some design done on what that little park is. It's not just, hey, let's throw a couple of benches and some ligustrums out there and we're good. I mean, that could actually be a statemental small park. And as far as the property on the north side, as far as the property on the north side, it's a series of lots that, can you hear me? Everybody hear me okay? Okay, anyway, the city-owned lots on the north side of the road, on the north side of Jax, but on the west side of South Beach Parkway, they were bought primarily by the city to prevent driveway curb cuts on the South Beach Parkway. So that's not saying that, as I said, and this is just a concept I've been thinking about for several years. I'm not trying to get your buy-in right here today, but let's assume that there is the ability or the desire to put a multi-purpose path going north from Jacksonville Drive to connect to South Beach Park and the skate park all the way up to Osceola. Well, when you got those Jacksonville Drive lots, if you're not going to open them up to single family, which I think is good that we don't, because those would be hazardous driveways on South Beach Parkway, then that whole stretch of area, maybe the multi-purpose trail doesn't stay right on the curb. Maybe it goes in and meanders underneath, clear cut underneath those pine trees, and it's a nicer, more serpentine part of the path. And then when you get back in front of Riptide and in front of South Beach Park, it retains that straight linear dimension. That I envisioned, I was going to talk to y'all about. Maybe that's a project, maybe we set that out for an RFP and get some private sector design thought on, hey, this is how this would be best used. And I keep going back to, I'm not sure we're using the southwest corner for parking. I'm still, in my mind, I'm not sure who would park there and why.
If I may,
anyway, that was my
just something as a group to discuss, because it was brought up past, and I'm sorry, Art, I know that I'm taking more time than I need on this, but Bill, what I'm thinking is that we have the initiative where you buy a brick, you do a bench, you do a memorial park per se, and it can even be educational based, which we can use the Carver Center for, even if we wanted to do spots in there. But it would serve as people could park in our little lot and go over and just, go to the art area in that area or memorial spot and just, sit and watch people even. I mean, that's the only reason I was suggesting using it as a parking lot and maybe incorporating this, because whatever we do there, it's like we're gonna build this very nice path to the beach going, west to east. And then all of a sudden we have this parking lot there, and then we're gonna tear it up again to reincorporate. I just didn't think it was something, I just think it's something we should consider as a group to maybe make a recommendation to the city what to do with their property as an option. So we'll say, well, if you guys kind of think this is a good idea, we'd be willing to, give our property to supply people to be able to go see their memorial bench or go, it's just a thought. That's all it is. It's just a thought.
Well, the whole
Mr.
idea
Moore?
about the, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Mr. Moore, did you have a comment to Francis' question?
Well,
You're
yeah,
muted.
I kind of want to, in lieu of, I guess, making a direct recommendation, because I know that you all want to feel comfortable with your decision on the north or the south. If I can just recap or make a couple of observations. The plan to have the path on the south gave us enough room to reconstruct the sidewalk that's currently on the north side of the road. So we would meet, kind of the complete street guidance, have corridors on both sides of the road so people wouldn't have to cross back and forth mid-block. And also, we would have better alignment if we have to realign the road, which we decided, the analysis told us if we want the 8-foot path on the north side, we will have to realign the road, and then there will be no opportunity for any path on the south side. And the additional cost is a minimum $150,000. And that's an additional cost, including now you lose a sidewalk on the opposite side of the road. So there's some, tangible and intangible additional costs of not having that extra infrastructure. So I just want to make those observations. And we do have crossings. When you get down to South Beach, there are east-west crossings across South Beach on both the north and the south that are coordinated with traffic and safety crossing buttons on both the north and the south side of Jack's Drive, and then the crossings north and south on both the east and west side of South Beach. So you have plenty of opportunity to cross back and forth. So I just want to make those observations to hopefully help you make your decision and feel good about it.
Francis, did you finish your questions? Jeff, followed by Sam.
Okay. Mr. Moore just basically confirmed what I was going to say, in that to me, it makes a whole lot more sense to do the south side. And I'm really struggling to see any reason why to do it on the north side. It would look better. There's more room. You get the 2 sidewalks. I'd be totally in favor of the south side.
Sam?
Yes, are we proposing either or, north side or south side? And seems like there's one proposal for an 8-foot sidewalk as opposed to a 6-foot sidewalk. And I also have a question about the additional cost for relocating the utilities. I think it's a practical idea to put them underneath the sidewalk, but I don't see a cost estimate for the utilities. So that's my question.
Well, Sam, the utility is going underground eventually, regardless of where we put this thing at. The concern is, the question is, if you're going to put if you're eventually going to put all the utility underground, and you're going to do all the drainage, and all that's all going to be torn up, it seems like it'd be pretty simple to just go ahead and put that path after you're done doing all that.
Mm-hmm.
Did I answer your question, Sam?
Yes, also the cost factor. There's no line item for the cost. Seems like there's $150,000, but then the additional costs for the utilities. Would we incur those costs, and how much?
There is no difference in cost because Beaches Energy is doing it regardless, either now or later, but they're going to do it. Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I'm sorry about any confusion there. There are some additional utilities on that south side, some fiber optics, some other cable utilities, and it's those costs, I guess, we were looking at, and Brian was hoping to quantify that, but it's very difficult at this level of that design to quantify those costs. The utilities may be okay with having some of their infrastructure under the asphalt, or they may not, and we may have to pay to move those utilities using city dollars, or we may be able to get them to move them. It's not something we could quantify, but we felt like there would be some sort of a noticeable, if not substantial, cost to move those utilities beyond the electric utilities. And on the sidewalk widths, the way this worked, the genesis of this was when we were doing the drainage project, we didn't want to take away the sidewalk on the north side, which currently I believe is probably about a 4-foot sidewalk. And when we redid the roadway, we had the opportunity then to add an additional sidewalk at a more modern, probably 6 foot on the south side, and then replace, because we'd be tearing most of it up anyway, replace that old sidewalk on the north side with an up to a 6-foot sidewalk. And then the recommendation from administration came is possibly we could look at putting an 8-foot multi-use path on here as part of our new kind of east-west corridor type of initiative. So that's when we looked at, instead of the 6-foot on the south, switch it to an 8-foot on the south, keep the 5 up to 6-foot sidewalk on the north. And then we were asked to kind of look at, can we put that 8-foot on the north? So that's how the sizes kept going from 5 to 6 to 8, back to 6. I hope that makes a little more sense.
And one
Dan,
other
does
thing, yes, one other thing. You were talking about the realignment of the traffic. Are you talking about vehicular traffic, or were you talking about foot traffic? Is there going to be any vehicle impediments there? Will there be any impediments?
In order to get that 8-foot path on the north, because of some of the elevation changes on the roadway, particularly on the east portion as you get to South Beach Parkway, dropping the road, we would have to realign the direction, the travel lanes of that portion of Jacksonville Drive and shift them south several feet to create additional right-of-way between the travel lanes and the property on the north side. And so, yes, realign the actual travel lanes of that road that is currently a straight east-west roadway.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, can I
Any
add
other
one point to that? Can I add one point to
Sure.
that? Cale, when you reference that, this is to Mr. Moore, you reference that as a straight alignment now. Actually, it's offset to the south now, so you'd actually be exacerbating that misalignment now by shifting the road further to the south. Because if you look at the curb, it's not an organic straight shot intersection. It's got an offset now. Putting the path on the north side of the road would further skew that alignment in my mind. I mean, it's visual to me. And that was just the point. The other point was, if we go forward with the path on the north side of the road, does that mean you would not put any, this is to Mr. McKee, does that mean there would not be any sidewalk component on the south side if this multi-purpose path becomes, ends up going on the north side? I just wasn't sure about that.
Yeah,
Ryan?
that's correct, Bill. With us doing that shift, I know Cale said something about the shift will be a few feet to the south. It's really with what we laid out to get something to work. That south edge of the Jacksonville Drive today, that pavement would basically have to slide 10 more feet to the south. And with that, it doesn't leave a lot of room in there to get another sidewalk and accept the off-site flow from the properties to get into the drainage like I discussed earlier. So yes, when we move that path to the north side, we lose the ability to put a sidewalk on the south side. That's the biggest takeaway, I guess, from this presentation is if you do a path on that north side, you get pedestrian facilities on the north side only. If you put the shared use path on the south, we can accommodate a pedestrian facility on the south side and the north side of the road. That's the biggest thing to take away. And also, if any of you are really familiar with the area out there, as you get over to Grande, there is one home that sits really close on that south side of the drive, on that south side of Jacksonville Drive. So we're basically taking this road now and shifting it closer to that home.
Correct. And also, don't the power poles come into play at some point if that roadway gets shifted to the south?
They do, and that's what we were talking about as far as Beaches Energy having the plan to go underground anyway. So that probably goes away. And also, Bill, I think you mentioned it made the shift a little bit worse. Actually, we held that same shift as you're coming through the intersection in the way it deflects over now. We just extended that same angle over to get our 10 feet away. And then it straightens out and pretty much parallels what's there today. It's just as we get to Grande, we do have to shift back over. So it adds a little bit of an additional shift down on that west end of the road.
Okay. Good information. Thank you.
Anybody have any more questions on item B? Bill, now, do you need a recommendation from us if we want to go on the south end or the north end of that road? Or is this just information?
I'd like to just get I mean, Mr. Jones was happy to share his opinion about it. If anybody has a formulated opinion based on this preference, I wouldn't mind getting it from you now, but if you want to talk about it again, that's up to y'all. I'd like to get some form of guidance. I'm not asking for a formal vote, but just if there's 3 or 4 of y'all that are more preferred to one than the other, I'd like to know that at this point. If you
I'll
know.
just ask him, I'll ask
Front
him a
to
quick
south.
question, I'll just ask him a quick question if they want to go in the north or the south. Gary, north or south?
When you say north or south, you're talking about where the 8-foot sidewalk goes, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. And after everything that I've heard and that I've physically gone out there and taken a look at, I believe the best location for the 8-foot sidewalk would be to the south side of Jacksonville Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff,
Clearly south side.
Sam? Unmute yourself.
South side.
Francis?
Oh, she
I would
already said
agree, south side makes the most sense.
All right, Bill, I'm with south side as well, so it sounds unanimous from us.
Okay, thank you. it gives me a little bit of guidance.
All right,
Excuse me, through the chair, before we move on, could you please ask Mr. McKee to provide his name and address for the record?
Mr. Moore and Mr. McKee, if you both would give your name and address.
I'll go first. I'm Cale Moore, the Public Works Project Engineer for City of Jacksonville Beach.
Brian McKee, I'm Hanson Professional Services, the design consultant for the project. And you need my address is 13503 Las Brisas Way, North Jacksonville, Florida, 32224.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Chandra.
Okay, Bill, on to item number C.
This is back to the meeting director. Were you able to get the PowerPoint put up? So I don't know if each individual member has that copy of Mr. Paytow's handout dated February the 7th. Jacob, were you able to get that up on so we can see it?
Yep, give me 1 second.
Or conversely, does each one of the members have a copy of the South Beach Improvement Area possible remaining improvement projects list that Gary came up with?
Give me a thumbs up if you have. Give me a thumbs up if you have it in front of you. No, not everybody's got it. We're gonna have to put it on the screen. There we go.
Do we have a Zoom ability? Can that be zoomed up at all? Oh, there you go. Whoa, back off a little bit more. Okay, I just need to be able to get all the dots. Okay, since we were not able to talk about this, I think at our March 16th meeting, the meeting was timed. Oh, that's the meeting that we had to cancel because of COVID. So basically, I know these bullets, there's 20 bullets on here. What I did preliminarily just to aid in further discussion, and Gary, I want to caveat this, I'm not discounting any of your thoughts about these potential projects, but I think this list might potentially be pared down a little bit after you and I have this meeting with the chief financial officer to see allowable funding and not allowable funding. But my big takeaway is, and we can go through them all, but my big takeaway initially is I've got 8 that are total green lights, and I totally agree they're likely projects that we can use South End funding for. I only have 4 on here that I feel are probably not within allowable statutory expenditures. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them that I need to do further research, or I need a little more justification as to why the CRA would spend money on that. So the first 2, I totally agree that those are identified in the Waits and Moy infrastructure plan. I'm going to need to get assistance from Public Works to determine what the split is of viable CRA projects versus city-funded projects. Because if I'm not mistaken, that Waits and Moy study looked at the entire area for infrastructure improvements, not just within the district. And if I need to be corrected, I'm wrong. But if there are remaining projects that are to be CRA funded on those lists, then we need to get those forward and get them in our CRA budgeting. So that's for the first 2. And Gary, I'm not trying to overrun. I'm just trying to respond to each one of these comments initially.
Well, can I just ask a quick?
Yeah, sure.
Can I just ask a quick question? I mean, Public Works put together a list of projects. This was dated the 27th of January. And there was a whole list of projects that seemed to be still needed to be completed, water and sewer projects, roadway projects, and some other projects that needed to be constructed. So I'm assuming that those are all CRA related type of projects.
I understand that. I just need verification of that because in my mind, that Weights and Moist study did include some projects that weren't CRA scope, they were city scope. And I just need clarification on that. But that is a good point, and something within there, if it's definitely CRA designated, you're right. We'll get those programmed. We'll get the funding allocated for them. So I agree with that. Number 3, the third one about physically defining the limits of the city rights of way. I'm not sure I wouldn't know what you mean. Further physically define the limits of city rights of ways.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges I think that's out there is understanding where the right of way is that the city has for roads and things to that extent. What really is the location of the property lines and so forth? In certain areas, it's very difficult to determine that. And, it may be an item that relates a little bit more to work that's down in the downtown district, but there are some areas in the South District also that could be defined a little bit better. And using Jacksonville Drive as an example, that, obviously with the project that's being done down there, that'll get defined more so down along that road than what we have presently.
What do you envision as a physical delineator of a right of way, though? I'm not sure what are you talking about? Markers, memorials? I'm not sure what you're talking about to define.
Whatever
them.
the city thinks is appropriate. I mean, I don't know what the city typically uses for right of way delineation. Some cities have some very specific markers that they use.
Okay, I just need a little understanding about. That's the one I did a red light, green light, yellow light. That's one I just had yellow because I thought the group might benefit from a little more discussion about where you were going.
Yeah.
Okay, the next 3
yeah,
or the next 2.
We can talk.
Yeah, okay. And I'm not trying to gloss over these because some of these are some good points. Points 4 and 5, the next one about improving the 2 frontage roads on either side of J. Turner Butler. Number 1, those are both within FDOT rights of way. In terms of specifically J. Turner Butler, even though it's an FDOT facility, maintenance and operational function and support for that road are deeded to the JTA. So we'd have to coordinate with them, number 1, and especially on the Marsh Landing Parkway, the improvements to be made for local traffic exiting JTB, that's outside of the redevelopment district. If you come off of J. Turner Butler and are driving towards Longhorn and Target and all that,
Right.
It's only when you pass that Hampton Inn Hotel that you get into the redevelopment district. So the rest of that is City of Jacksonville Beach area, but it's JTA FDOT right away. So we don't have the ability to do any improvements out there. We can talk to them and tell them what we want to do, but it's not a fiscal opportunity for us to facilitate an improvement. Does that make sense? Because it's physically outside the district.
I understand what you're saying. When I did write this, I wasn't 100% sure of where the district started and stopped on Marsh Landing Parkway, right, because it's not clearly indicated when you look at the maps. You have to kind of decipher, but that intersection of
the district's not defined.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right. It's the definition of the district boundaries. It's kind of like the rights of way boundaries. You're not sure when you enter and when you exit. We could put some signage up that says entering South End District. I get you. I understand. It's kind of the general same comment for the Sanctuary Parkway. If you're talking about the throat where it opens up past Sanctuary Parkway to get out on the Butler, that's outside of our district.
No, actually,
Bill,
I think what I'm referring to really there is the roads that access onto Sanctuary Parkway. The residential streets and so forth. I think we just need to look at possibly some improvements there. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the names of the streets right now, but they're east of where Sanctuary Boulevard comes into.
Right.
Bill?
And there again, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I don't mean to cut you guys off, but have you guys gone through this list together?
No.
Not individually, no. We can do that with our meeting with Ashley. It'd be a good point.
I was going to say I don't see the need of the rest of us sitting here. I don't know what's going on with this echo now, but I don't see the need of the rest of us watching you guys go through this list. If you
Okay,
guys
well,
want to
we
go
can
through
do,
this list and then, if you guys want to go through this list and then bring it back to us when you guys figured out or settled on the ones you want to bring before the committee as a whole.
okay, we can do that.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you. I don't think we necessarily need to take everybody's time on this list. You had requested that I put this together, and it was to be part of a workshop that we were going to have. Unfortunately, it got canceled because of circumstances that we're all dealing with. But I just want to make sure that as we move forward in this next budget year, that we're not going to be giving away funds for projects that are still needing to be done in the South District area. That's my concern.
Gary, you were preaching to the choir on that one. We
Point well taken.
we tried our best to stop those guys. My understanding is that it's still the council's decision, that even though we said we need the funds, they can still decide they want to give it back to Jacksonville. But I am completely on board with you. I just don't want to sit here as you and Bill go through this list and you're trying to explain to Bill what you're talking about. I appreciate the fact you put it together, and I think it's a useful list. But, you know, after you guys, you're going to meet with Bill for other issues. If you guys can go through this list and then collectively bring it back and then sell it to the rest of the group, I think that'd be a better bang for everybody's time.
And
Understood.
I totally agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I'm, more than willing to do that. So whenever I can get something set up with Bill, and I don't know what the procedures are right now at City Hall and whether I can physically sit down with Bill or not, but I'd really like to do this more face to face than I would over Zoom or any other media.
Understood.
Jacob, can you bring us back to the members? There we go. All right. Was any other questions or any other thing to come before us? I want to get a thumbs up or thumbs down from the group. If you guys want me to pursue a meeting with Jim Gilmore and see about hiring him on to help us move forward, as I talked about earlier, I got 1 thumbs up, 2 thumbs up. Gary, you have a question?
Yes, sir. I'm not sure I understand the scope of what he would do for us. Can you help clarify that a little bit?
Well, we've been talking about hiring somebody to help facilitate, help alleviate some of the things that are holding Bill Mann back, because a lot of at first it started off as being code enforcement. Then it kind of morphed to somebody that's just going to keep us up to date constantly on the things that are going on in the downtown area. And then it came across as almost being like a separate executive director for the CRA board. And there's many different ideas of what this guy's supposed to look like. And I went back to the guy that actually created our CRA. And back then, I want to say 25 years ago, when they created the CRA, it actually was an executive director, who this guy is, the one I'm talking to, that had his own separate office, had his own separate staff, and they handle all the CRA business. And so I kind of wanted him to come in and help us formulate, I guess, how do we get back to that point and not be a piece of Bill's job and not be a piece of somebody else's job, but allow for us to be more autonomous on the things we're trying to get done and to be more functional. I think Francis talked about it earlier, and he's some guy that right now that's got a contract. He's a guy we don't have to wait until October 1st. He's a guy that we can start moving tomorrow. And so what I need is just a thumbs up or thumbs down if I can meet with Bill, meet with him, and see if we can't come together with something and present it to you guys, because I can't improve anything on my own, but I don't want to waste time talking to this guy if you guys are completely against the idea.
So he would not be somebody that would be full-time on staff. He would be just a consultant to us for a period of time.
He's starting off as a consultant. That doesn't mean that he can't be full-time. I can tell you that he doesn't want to be full-time, but it doesn't mean that we can't get somebody like him full-time.
Mm-hmm. Well, if he is full-time, then obviously I think we need to really understand his background and resume and so forth. If we're bringing him on board to help us get us back to a working point that I think we would all be more comfortable with. I would agree with that. I mean, I would think that that's a worthy conversation to have since he has the knowledge of the CRA board.
Okay, so Gary, yes, Jeff, yes, Francis, yes, Sam? Okay. All right, any other things to come that you guys want to talk about before we end this meeting? I guess the question I have is, when is the next meeting? Thoughts, questions?
And are we
ideas?
gonna have, and are we gonna have a,
Sorry, my fault.
Your fault.
Francis, you have the floor.
and are we gonna have a workshop to address some of the other things we were talking about before COVID?
We can. That goes right back to what I was saying about next meeting. I know the next scheduled meeting is the end of, what month? The end of June. But if you want to have another workshop prior to that, I don't have a problem with that. Someone throw out a date and let's see what the availabilities are.
My recommendation would be that we have a workshop prior to the next meeting. I think there are enough subjects to talk about. I don't know where we stand. The one subject that didn't get brought up today was we had some discussion about limiting commercial trucks on First Street. I don't know where that stands right now. I know we've all been in hiatus here for a while and we're having to play a little catch up, but for that reason alone, I think it's be prudent to have a workshop mid-June and then our typical meeting towards the end of June.
All right, Gary, Jeff?
Yeah, I just want to say on the, it was my task to take down the edits to that delivery truck ordinance and get it to Bill. And I have a bad habit of drafting emails and then forgetting to hit send. And that was, I found it in my drafts a couple days ago, so it wasn't in time for this meeting. So apologize for that.
What does June the 15th look like to everybody? I guess let me start with Bill. Bill, the availability of June the 15th?
I need to get several dates from y'all because I can't tell you right now about availability. I'm hoping when we get back in that time frame, we may be able to have what we call a hybrid meeting. That's actually us meeting in the council chambers with social distancing. And you know the typical crowds we get in the audience. I've been to one of these hybrid council meetings, and even at 6 foot spacing in the chairs, we're able to have 15 or 20 people in the audience. I think we can do that. And I'm not knocking this format, but I think it's really more productive. And I think we can get a little bit more accomplished in a set amount of time than if we do virtual. If we do virtual, there's no issue about scheduling. If we do this, what we call a hybrid meeting at this point, I just need to make sure I've got chambers availability.
Well, I don't mind doing a hybrid meeting, but can we do that and just not have everybody else? I mean, I think that the rest of us, just as long as we televise it, do you necessarily need to have everybody else there?
Well, that depends. If you'll notice on this agenda, I took out the public comment because typically in my experience is typically in workshops, there's not public's available to watch, but they're not like the council workshops we have. The council doesn't have the opportunity to comment at a workshop. So if you want to do that, we could probably do that hybrid meeting and not have anybody there. And we could set up, if you've got any comments on what you see as the agenda, just send them in to us by email and I can make sure the emails are available at that meeting. If you want to do something like that, we can talk about that.
All right, real quickly, Francis, thoughts?
On a date or thoughts on doing workshop before our next meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Both, 100% on board. I think we have a lot on the agenda and October's coming soon too quick and we need to put our money to work.
Sam?
Well, I'm more comfortable with a virtual meeting still, and but I am available for the 15th.
Jeff?
Favor of both, and I'm available on the 15th.
Gary?
And that being a workshop and the next meeting, whenever that needs to occur.
Gary?
I'm available on the 15th. The next scheduled CRA meeting based on my calendar is the following Monday, the 22nd of June.
That's correct.
Okay, and I'm fine with both of them.
All right, well, Bill, I think we
Wait,
should go
I
with
need to-
virtual.
Okay, based on that, I just need to, there's a logistic issue with that. If we have a workshop meeting and I am charged with presenting anything or providing anything, or Mr. Moore in Public Works is tasked with producing something for that meeting, I'd have to have it posted the Friday before that Monday meeting because I've got to have the agendas posted at least a week in advance. My point is, I don't think I can have anything that would require action at the regular council meeting that would come up at that June 15th meeting. I can't physically do that. I've got to have anything that's on the agenda or the workshop. If it's an agenda for the regular meeting or the workshop, I've got to have it posted and the backup materials for it 7 days before the meeting. So if you could do it on the 8th, and it doesn't have to be a Monday, y'all. It doesn't, especially, let's assume that we'll have the workshop in this virtual format again. This wasn't bad. We got through it. So if you want to do that, I don't think it's necessarily limited to a Monday, but it's a problem for me logistically doing it on back-to-back Mondays. I can't get that done, especially if one meeting leads to the next.
How about June the 10th, virtual? What does that look like to everybody at 5 o'clock? I got thumbs up from Jeff, thumbs up from Sam, thumbs up from Francis. Okay, so Bill, how about the 10th at 5 o'clock virtually?
Okay, the 10th, that means on June the 3rd, I will need to have whatever the agenda items are going to be discussed for the workshop. We know we're going to have Jeff's, the edits to the parking ordinance. We've got that. He's already got that ready. We'll have that out. If it's continued discussion on anything we've talked about today, they were not driven by information that was provided to you, except for the PowerPoint. I think we've, for now, put to bed the CRA's opinion about the Jack's Drive option. So I just need I need more detail about what you want to talk about at that workshop. So if there's any information I have to provide, I can get it.
I can get individuals to send you emails, but I can start off right now. We'll talk about what, if anything, we've done with Jim Gilmore. What, if anything, we've done with the attorney and the work that he's done on bringing the plans together. And then what, if anything, we've done, on Jeff's parking issue. So those are three right off the top of the bat that are kind of hanging there.
I think that would be sufficient for a workshop.
Okay. And I think going back to virtual, because all it takes is one person not feeling comfortable. So virtual is the way to do it because we want for everybody to feel comfortable and participate.
I agree. And hopefully that's all going to lift fairly soon, but we don't know when new normal's coming in, number one, number two, what it's going to be. So, okay. I got my marching order.
Jeff, did you have a question? All right, does anybody else have a question or comment or concern before we adjourn? Guys, this is new for me, but thank you for your time and your patience. And if you do have anything that comes up, please send it to Bill. But if not, let's plan on meeting on the 10th at 5 o'clock virtually. So if you can at least log on 10 or 15 minutes early, so we make sure we got all the details worked out, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
One last thing for this meeting. The meeting invites are prescriptive for each individual for each meeting, so you will get a new email. So don't say, hey, I'll just call it to the old and log it. That won't work. Jacob will send us new credentials. But other than that, that's it. I appreciate y'all participating. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Be
Thanks,
safe.
everybody.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Take care.
Good night.